Good evening, everyone. I'm Elias Grant, Psychology and Mindset, and today I want to take you on a journey into a topic we've all experienced, either as the culprit or the victim. Let me start with a hook. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to be late to everything, no matter how important, no matter how simple, no matter how many alarms they set? It's easy to label them as careless or irresponsible, but the truth is far more fascinating. Because behind chronic lateness lies a complex psychological pattern that reveals far more about a person than just their sense of time. Time optimism is one of the most misunderstood psychological patterns behind chronic lateness, and yet it is one of the most powerful. It begins with a subtle but persistent miscalculation, the belief that tasks take far less time than they truly do. This mindset isn't about irresponsibility, it's about perception. The brain of a time optimist naturally compresses time, creating an illusion of efficiency that feels realistic, until reality proves otherwise. And here's the hook: people who struggle with time optimism are not trying to cut corners. They genuinely expect themselves to perform far faster than humanly possible. They don't underestimate time because they're careless. They underestimate time because their internal clock speaks a different language. At the core of this pattern lies a deep psychological bias. Time optimists often believe they can transition instantly between tasks, complete responsibilities at lightning speed, and bypass delays that everyone else views as normal. They look at a 30-minute commute and think, if I go a little faster, I can do it in 15. They see a project that realistically requires 2 hours and convince themselves it can be handled in 45 minutes if they really focus. This internal narrative feels empowering. It feels motivating. It feels efficient. And that's why it's so seductive. The hook here is simple. The time optimist's greatest strength, optimism, becomes their greatest trap. To understand this psychology more deeply, imagine a person who consistently tells themselves, I have plenty of time. They don't say it to avoid accountability. They say it because they believe it. Their brain works with compressed estimates, painting a picture of time as flexible, stretchy, and accommodating. This perspective often develops early in life, especially in people who are praised for doing things quickly, juggling tasks easily, or performing well under pressure. Over time, the brain begins rewarding the idea that things should be quick, and anything slower feels like a failure or a waste. So, when faced with a new task, they default to the optimistic belief that speed is natural for them, even if past experiences repeatedly contradict that belief. And here's the fascinating part. Time optimists often associate speed with identity. Being the fast one, the efficient one, or the multitasker who gets everything done, becomes part of their self-image. So admitting that tasks take longer isn't just about time, it's about ego, confidence, and the fear of feeling less capable. They'd rather fight the clock than challenge their own self-perception. This is where time optimism becomes psychologically complex. It's not simply a misjudgment. It's a narrative of capability. However, the internal conflict grows every time reality disagrees with their expectations. They miss deadlines, arrive late, rush through tasks, or find themselves overwhelmed by workloads they thought would be quick. What happens next is a cycle of guilt and renewed optimism. They think, next time I'll start earlier. But when the next time arrives, that same voice whispers, you'll be fine, you've done this before. And the loop continues. The hook: time optimists aren't ignoring the truth, they're negotiating with it. Despite this, people with time optimism often have remarkable strengths. They tend to be high energy, creative thinkers, and problem solvers who thrive under pressure. Their optimism helps them move quickly, stay motivated, and avoid unnecessary stress until time catches up. Their challenge isn't a lack of ability, it's the mismatch between their internal timing and the external world. Most people measure time with clocks. Time optimists measure it with hope. When we understand the psychology of time optimism, the behavior becomes less about poor planning and more about a mindset shaped by confidence, identity, and perception. These individuals don't mean to be late. They simply expect the world to move as fast as their minds do. And that gap, that tiny miscalculation, becomes the difference between punctuality and perpetual delay. There is a unique psychological pattern behind those who rely on pressure-driven performance, and it is far more intricate than simply waiting until the last minute. These individuals possess a mindset where urgency becomes fuel, where deadlines transform into adrenaline, and where time pressure functions almost like a psychological switch. The moment the clock starts ticking louder, their mind sharpens. Tasks that once felt overwhelming suddenly feel manageable. Ideas flow faster. Focus becomes laser-tight. And here's the hook: they don't chase the deadline because they enjoy stress. They chase it because it's the only time they feel fully alive, fully capable, and fully engaged. For people who operate this way, pressure is not a threat, it is a stimulant. Their brains react to urgency by releasing a surge of adrenaline and dopamine, chemicals that heighten alertness and motivation. In that moment, the world narrows to one task, one goal, one finish line. They feel the kind of clarity that others spend hours trying to create through planning and preparation. And because they repeatedly succeed in these high-pressure moments, their mind begins to learn a powerful association: I perform best when time is running out. This belief quietly shapes their behavior, encouraging them, consciously or not, to postpone tasks until the pressure becomes intense enough to activate that heightened state. This habit often starts early. Many pressure-driven individuals were praised for pulling it off at the last second. In school or early adulthood, they handed in assignments completed overnight, solved problems while the deadline was closing in, or excelled in high-stakes situations where others panicked. The praise they received didn't just reward the outcome, it reinforced the method. The hook here is striking. Success under pressure doesn't just build confidence, it builds dependency. The person begins to rely on urgency the way some people rely on music, caffeine, or external structure. It becomes the emotional trigger that brings out their best performance, even if it also brings out stress. But beneath this seemingly bold pattern lies a more subtle psychological truth. Many pressure-driven performers struggle to feel motivated without intensity. Normal time frames feel too slow, too dull, too uninspiring. Their mind craves the rush that urgency provides. Without pressure, they drift. They procrastinate. Their thoughts scatter. Nothing feels important enough to start. But once the deadline approaches and the stakes rise, everything inside them snaps into alignment. There is a hook in this dynamic too. What looks like procrastination on the surface is often a biological need for stimulation. Pressure for them is not chaos, it's clarity. However, living in this mode comes with its own internal conflicts. While they perform impressively under pressure, they also carry the weight of emotional fatigue. The cycle of waiting, rushing, recovering, and repeating becomes exhausting. They may tell themselves that next time they will start earlier, manage their schedule better, eliminate the stress, but deep down, they know that the intensity is part of the process. The mind craves what it's used to, and for them, pressure feels like home. Yet each time the pattern repeats, a small voice inside whispers, "Why do I always do this to myself?" That internal contradiction creates guilt, confusion, and frustration, even though the outcome often turns out well. Still, it is important to recognize that pressure-driven individuals are not disorganized or careless. They are wired to respond strongly to urgency. Their strength lies in their ability to be decisive, creative, and deeply focused when others freeze. They are the people who can turn chaos into strategy, who can deliver quality work when time is scarce, who can think clearly in moments when everyone else is overwhelmed. The challenge they face is not a lack of skill, it is the need to learn how to activate their best self without relying solely on deadlines. And once they master that balance, they don't just perform well under pressure, they perform well, period. Emotional avoidance is one of the most silent yet impactful psychological forces behind chronic lateness, and it often operates beneath a person's awareness. At its core, emotional avoidance is not about time at all, it's about feelings. It's about the subtle discomforts, hidden anxieties, and internal pressures that make starting a task feel heavier than it should. And here's the hook: when someone avoids beginning something, they are rarely avoiding the task itself. They are avoiding the emotions the task triggers inside them. Lateness becomes the symptom, not the cause. For many individuals, certain responsibilities spark anxiety, overwhelm, or the fear of not performing well enough. Even something as simple as getting ready to leave the house can create emotional friction. They think, what if I forget something? What if I don't look good enough? What if I'm not prepared? These micro fears may not be loud, but they are powerful.